Before we start this show, just a word from our sponsor, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest that pro wrestling has had to offer. Along with their awesome line of pro wrestling apparel, they do offer many services. In the world of wrestling, there are hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads. Don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. If you would like to discuss possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or whatever, drop them a line. Go to 20 by 20 Apparel. That's the number 20x, the number 20 apparel.com. Now, let's get to the show.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what are those. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop it tomorrow. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. I tell I'm running out of breath, I tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh, fresh, goddammit, we fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh is the Word podcast. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. And on Fresh is the Word, we like to deliver wisdom through great stories from the minds of bright creatives of pop culture. Through those stories, we like to dissect the journey of our guests and present actionable lessons and advice for our listeners, no matter what career or avenue of artistry they pursue. And before we get into this episode, I want to give a shout out to Knox Money, Bang Belushi, and Foulmouth for the theme music for Fresh is the Word. And if you would like to support the podcast, you can always go to freshisthepodcast.com and just share any of the links for any of the episodes on any of your social media platforms. And also, you can subscribe to Fresh is the Word pretty much anywhere that podcasts are streamed. And that includes Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, pretty much everywhere. And please rate and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. It will definitely help out the show. If you want to contact me, you can always reach me by email at djkfresh@gmail.com. Or you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KFresh is the Word, and on Facebook at facebook.com/KFresh. And you can also follow Fresh is the Word on Twitter at Fresh is the Word, and that's is with an IZ, Instagram at Fresh is the Word Podcast, and Facebook at facebook.com/Fresh is the Podcast. And this is episode 157, and the guest for this episode is Detroit hip-hop artist Chris Orrick, who just released his newest album, Out to Sea, via Mello Music Group. Orrick already has a vast discography of music that touches on his own personal experiences and his views on the world going on these days. During our conversation, we talked about the new album, his creative freedom, making music while not expecting stardom, and much more. Before we get into this interview with Chris Orrick, I definitely want to remind you how you can support the podcast, and you can support the podcast via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/freshtheword, and there's all sorts of tiers starting at $1 per month, and you can help me out, help out Fresh is the Word. And I just dropped a new Patreon-only exclusive podcast episode with an interview with Jay Dilla's mom, Maureen Ma Dukes Yancey, that I recorded from her, from their home in May of 2009. It's the first part of the 2-hour episode or 2-hour interview that we did. The next episode number 5 will be the second parts. So I had to break it up because it was really long. So go over to patreon.com/fresh is the word to sign up. And there's all sorts of different tiers that you can be a part of and actually be a part of the show. So please do that. Please spread the word on Fresh is the Word as the main podcast, the Patreon. We've got so many goodies lined up. I have so many interviews in the can right now, so much good stuff coming up. So please, spread the word, share links, tell your people. That would be great. Thank you. And let's get on to this interview with Chris Orrick. You've already, in my opinion, have had a great discography of music in your music career. When you were, no problem. Going into Out to Sea, what were you sort of trying to accomplish? How does this album sort of differ or continue on from what you've been doing in the past?
I think that when I was, honestly, this is one of the first records that I've really done that I didn't really have like a preconceived idea of where I wanted to go with things. I really just kind of started collecting beats from like, I do have people like Nolan the Ninjas on there that produced, some people that I have worked with in the past, but I kind of wanted to work with some different people. So I put out like feelers on Facebook and Twitter asking for people to submit beats. And I ended up finding a few like really dope people from a couple guys from overseas, UK actually, SIM Productions and Suki Beats. And that kind of started it for me. Like that's where it really got things going with like just the ball rolling, and the beats just kind of had a different vibe to me. They had a more upbeat kind of bright vibe, which I'm usually not known for. For people that are going to listen to my discography, it's usually pretty dark, but it's still like for me still that, but I think I wanted to just sort of the headspace I was in, I've been kind of like isolated, and just the internet has been driving me crazy, and kind of writing from that perspective of like feeling like I'm out on an island. And I feel like a lot of us feel like that, where the internet, whether it's politics or whatever, kind of puts us in this like binary position of like you choose one side and then not knowing how to like find your place, and feeling like I just don't know if I relate to a lot of the shit I see online anymore. So conceptually that's where it came from. Sonically it was sort of that, but I think it's, it's not as deep, as I just made it. It's, on its 9 tracks about, me being introspective as usual. So
from your last album, how do you feel like, you've grown? What's different from when you were writing the last album?
I think in a sense, I like, again, just kind of going back to it, I think I let someone listen to the record the other day, and then they said it was like kind of a breezy record. Like, I think for me, I'm just getting so much more comfortable. I don't know if it's getting older or whatever, with just writing what I want to write, not worrying so much about like what people might think of it. It's kind of hard to separate yourself as you're working at writing stuff, to not, at least for me, not be in this mode of like, almost having like the listener or potential audience like looking over my shoulder while I'm writing what they would think of it, whatever. And I just writing more for me again. I guess I hadn't done that. I'd felt like after my record Instinctive Drowning that I put out it with Ill Poetic a few years back, it like didn't do as well as I thought, and that kind of got me really in a rut of like, oh, I don't, being nervous about how to make music. So then I put out my record Portraits, which was the last one, trying to break out of that cycle. And I think again with this one, like, I usually go into writing a record and think I need to make it this, a certain length. It needs to hit 40 minutes. It needs to be at least 12 tracks, or, at least 10 or whatever. And when I started writing, and when I felt like I was done, I just stopped. Like I didn't try to push, eke more things out of it. I just was like, I feel good about this and I'm ready. It's kind of a short record. But it felt like I got out what I needed to say.
How did it feel to sort of break out of those sort of self-imposed, boundaries or, lengths and whatnot, and sort of have some freedom just to like start when you want to start and end when you want to end?
Very good. And I think it's going to be something that I'm going to be able to take, further. And I'm excited to see where, future projects go, because to me, this is more of a transitional, record for that, where this is the one that I think, and again, I don't think that truthfully, I don't think I've changed too much of of who I am or anything. I think it's from people that have come to expect, you know, or that are fans of mine, what you've come to expect from me. I think you'll pretty much get it on this record. But to me, it just felt more like just not worrying so much, man. And it's very good to have that moment of like, I can just end I don't have to make this record that, it's 30 minutes or something in length. It's only 9 songs, and just being like, it's done. That's a really cool thing to do for, the future things, to not have that kind of pressure. And again, that might be just getting older too, where it's just like, you realize that you're making music, you have a, decent fan base, and like the idea of superstardom is probably gone, for most likely, most likely scenario. So, and I never really thought that would happen anyways, but it's really kind of getting to that point now where you're just like, I just do this. It's a thing that I do and I love and I care about it. And I'm, super fortunate to be able to keep doing it, and getting paid for it.
Was there any moment or anything that happened that sort of put you in that place where you maybe just stop worrying so much? Do you remember the time when that sort of energy started to shift?
Yeah, I think that like I had, like I said, my record Instinctive Drowning didn't do very well. I had a couple of tours that I had lined up, for the following year, that ended up falling through, and I just got really, really, really depressed. Man, I didn't make music for a while. Probably one of the longest, since I was a teenager, probably one of the longest breaks that I'd had of not writing for a while. And then I made Portraits, which was more, and part of what Portraits taught me, the previous record, was kind of, again, not really going into it with a big focused idea and just kind of making songs, just doing, I like this beat, I'm going to write a song to it, and not like worried about how it's going to fit or, where it's going to make sense. And then it wasn't like a one moment thing. It was this kind of slow process of getting Portraits out. I also changed my name from Red Pill to Chris Orrick at that time. So that was scary, and it ended up being pretty much okay for the most part. We were really worried about sales and stuff, and we've been building the Red Pill brand for years. And to have that go smoothly and then just kind of come out of there and be like, oh yeah, I can do this. I know I'm comfortable with this. I've been doing it for a long time. Just not being worried, I guess, so much about it.
Doing the name change and then having it, run smoothly. Did that, put anything in your mind that, hey, I can be a little bit more adventurous with, stuff that I'm doing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because one of the other things too that happened, I keep like going back to it, but it is kind of where this is all coming from, was with Instinctive Drowning, it was a really, sonically a radical shift from anything that I had done previously with, like, even my work way back with like Hero, and then with Ugly Heroes and Look What This World Did to Us, my first solo with Mello, putting out Instinctive Drowning, which is just such a different style than what I had done before, and having that kind of commercially not be as successful as I wanted it to be, or as I thought it would be. It made me scared initially to be like, maybe I should just stick to what I'm doing, what people knew me for. And I kind of transitioned back into that in a way that sounds like it's like I'm going back to, kind of the opposite of what I'm saying, where that was sort of freeing, but it kind of was to just be like, you like this? People, this is the kind of music I like writing, like more like the Portraits and this new album Out to Sea. I think I find my voice a little bit better over the style of production. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't have to be like some groundbreaking artist that I thought that I could try to do, or you know what I mean, like thinking that I can do something, reinvent the wheel type shit. It's not important to me, and it's not really. I like pushing myself, but I like pushing myself through my writing, not necessarily the sonic qualities of it.
With with this time, going through sort of like freeing up your creativity, is how do you put your already established fan base into that process? How do you balance what you want to do with, with what you feel like your audience might like, or do you even, care at this point what your audience might like?
Um, I mean, I think this is kind of like the non-typical response of a artist or musician or whatever. But I do honestly care what fans think. I mean, and I don't mean it in a sense that like um, you know, I don't need their approval, but I appreciate the fact that people give a shit about what I do. I'm super lucky to have that. And anyone that no matter how big you are, if you have fans, I mean, I'm a pretty small artist, but if you have even a small core fan base of people that really fuck with you, it's not that you don't want to disappoint them. It's not, there's something where I know people. There's always that thing where they want their favorite album of an artist, and I've done it too, where you want them to recreate that, and it's an impossible thing to do.
Right.
So in a sense, I worry, but it's not like a pressure anymore, I guess. Like I think I had that pressure right after Instinctive Drowning, and now it's just like I hope that they like it, but I'm not gonna like freak myself out about it or worry about it anymore.
How do you concentrate on the fan base that does support and appreciate your work in comparison to trying to overreach into avenues that might not be possible? You talked about you know superstardom might never have been something that you could grab on, but you do have these people that really do support you. How do you concentrate on that?
I mean, for me, what I try my best to do, and what I've always tried, I'm not. It's easier for somebody on a smaller level to do it, but I always do my best to interact with people online. I think that that's important. I'm somebody that when I have toured in the past, I always take my time to talk to people and introduce myself, ask their name, try to get a feel for what they're doing. I really like focusing on giving back to people and being somewhat accessible. I think that some artists find more success by being more inaccessible, but for me, I like interacting with people because I think I come from a humble background. I write about it being humble, and I try to be that person. So I try to give back when I can. Try to respond to messages, to DMs, to Facebook messages, to tweets, all that kind of shit, and then hopefully. And it's funny, over the years, like that circle has, or those core group of fans, as it builds, like some of them you don't talk to or don't see online for a year, and then they come back, and then there's new ones popping up that that you try to interact with. So it's really, for me, just trying to make it not like I don't need some curtain of mystery behind who I am, because the music is who I am.
Yeah, that really doesn't fit you because you're like a everyday working man kind of guy. So trying to cloud it with mystery would just be weird.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't fit. It's not me. It's not like, it's not even like shit on other people, but it's just not me. I'm not that kind of person. I want to, if you see me at a show, we can have a beer and we can shake hands, as long as you're not like too weird or, the super drunk fan that is in your face, like pull on your shoulder and shit. But other than that, if you're cool, we can be pretty easy going dude. So.
How did you start to deal with, early on in your career, realizing that you have fans? How did you deal with that?
It's a weird thing, man. I mean, it's strange. And I don't think that, like, for me, I think the first time that I recognized it, and, this was being kind of was working with Apollo Brown and the Ugly Heroes stuff when we went on tour in Europe. And, like, we did one show, and then the next show was in Paris, and the show runner comes to pick us up and, ask him how ticket sales are doing. And he, it's not a huge venue. It's like 500 cap venue or something, but he says it's sold out. And I was like, holy shit, we're like playing a sold out show in Paris. That's unbelievable to me. You know what I mean? And then to have that people like knowing your word, people from Paris, I mean, French, they speak French, rapping every word and shit. And it was weird, really weird thing, and really humbling thing and cool thing. And honestly, kind of, there's like this, I'm a fairly introverted person, but like if you don't know me, but I'm pretty extroverted if you get around me, and especially if I've had a few, we've had a few drinks or something, whatever, however you end up doing it or hanging out at a party, I can be pretty loud and outgoing. So to have people walking up to me at shows that I don't really know, it's sort of a, I've been told like I'm almost like too humble, like in a negative way. Like you can almost like it's like I'm trying to hide, you know, but I really am. Like kind of, it's awkward to have people come up to you and tell you that, certain things, very positive things about you. I don't take compliments well, I guess. I don't know how to deal with it well because I get all embarrassed and shit. So,
Join the club.
but it's, yeah, exactly. Right. It's awkward. And I know you're like that. I think we're kind of similar in that sense. So,
Yeah, that's something I finally am like starting to get out of, being a little
like,
bit more.
hey, fresh man, you've been doing this shit for a long time. You've been in it. You know what I mean? Like shit like that is like, and that's how, and that to just accept like people respect you and what you do and what you've done, and that's
Thanks.
dope as hell.
Yeah, but just like for a long time, I just didn't really believe it.
Right. Yeah, that is a funny thing, man. Like trying to figure out like how to accept that you are like, I think a lot of people go through that, whether they're artists or not. You know what I mean? Like even just regular, everyday people finding their self-worth and realizing how the good parts of themselves that should be celebrated. It's hard to do.
Right, you're like, why are you, why should I celebrate this thing that I did? It's no big deal, whatever.
Right.
It's really no big deal. Then
Right.
but then after a while, you start to realize the reason why certain things get celebrated about you is because of your character when it comes down
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
And that, oh, these people kind of like what you're doing because you're also like a good person also. And
Right.
you've formulated these friendships, and it's not like you're doing everything with a ulterior motive. It's
Exactly.
that's when you realize that, oh yeah, it's because you're kind of a good dude, and you're doing something to support this culture or art form or whatever. That's when
Yeah.
you're like, you know what, I guess I can accept these these positive things that people are saying.
Yeah, man. And that's just, I 100% relate completely with that. That, I think especially when people get to know me, I know that I have a very kind of like, obviously through the music and online, my personality that gets shown online is kind of cranky dude. But I think when people get to talk to me, it's not, I express it through the music like that. And I can be a little outrageous online at points. I hopefully calm that down a lot, but it's, yeah, man, I think people get to realize like I just like to make music, man. I'm just a guy who likes to make music. I have I have opinions and like to put them online and in person, whatever. But for the most part, yeah, like you said, it's about just being a good, positive person. And as much as that's not how you would describe me through my music, it is more who I am in real life. And I think people want to root for, like in your case, like just good people. When you're good people, it's easier to root for that.
Over the years, you've been able to release a lot of projects on a fairly regular basis. That's something a lot of people would love to be in the position to be in. How does
Yeah.
it feel to be in that position? How do you feel like you've been able to maintain that to where a Mellow Music Group will continue to help put out your music?
I think that one is fostering the relationship with Mike at Mello, who runs a company. Because to be honest, I mean, I have there's even a line on the upcoming record about still getting supported, through the music and or getting the opportunity, even though the album sales may not always merit that. But it's because for me, number one, Mike at Mello has always been, he's an art guy first. I mean, there are many people that, can't say anything, but there are people that haven't survived, including myself. The money that's been put into the music has not been made back for sure. In some cases. But Mike believes in the art. I mean, it's like one of those things where the bigger names on the label are able to kind of, sustain the smaller ones on the label. It's even though the label mates aren't super close, I wouldn't say that about Mello for the most part. Mike makes it a case to make it that way, make it more of a family where the smaller fish are supported by the big fish, rather than having just the, maybe a handful of people that are making all of the money. And they do make the money, but, Mike is not taking home this lavish amount of money to do it. It's really a self-sustaining thing. It's a really kind of cool little social experiment, where it really is kind of socialized in a way that, it's coming from the top and helping to feed the bottom. And it's really cool. And it's all about, because it's his main ethos. I mean, of course, it's an industry. You want to make money. Everyone wants to make as much as they can, well, how we can. But it's literally art first for the dude. I mean, that's not saying that to kiss his ass or anything. It's getting to know him over the last, 5 years or whatever it's been, has really shown me that. And I think that part of it too might go back to, Mike knows, it's like that good guy thing. It's supporting a guy that you care about. And, I consider us friends as well as, business partners. So, it's been cool. And again, I'm super fucking lucky to even have the opportunity. So
For, somebody like yourself, if you had any advice for anybody who is doing, similar music as you are, or just in a similar position that you've been in the past, what advice would you give to them to at least, get that foot in the door to where maybe they can be in a similar position that you would be in, to where they can, put out music on a regular basis in a very professional and proper manner?
Well, I think that starts off by one being professional and proper. That's how for me, especially when I was young, never being late to shows, never being late to, recording. Shit happens, of course, but, for the most part, trying to treat it like you care about it, like you give a shit. I mean, for younger artists or anybody really, a huge thing to me has always been and there are certainly, exceptions to the rule, but
right.
I was always there for sound check a lot of, I remember being, running shows or working with shows where artists that, just frankly weren't that talented were showing up late to just either skipping sound check or, shit like that. It's just the details. Everything is in the details of being on point with your shit. Make sure that you're turning things in on time. If you're working with a label or whatever, make sure that you're doing what they're asking of you, at least within a reason. Being respectful. And then especially, as a younger person or whatever, if you're out there, you got to grind, man. I mean, it was, it burned me out after a while too, but, playing shows, you have to find that balance of overdoing it and overexposing yourself, but making sure that you're pretty consistently playing shows. When I was younger around Michigan, I was in Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, Flint, Detroit, Lansing. I was bouncing all around playing shows, Kalamazoo and whatever. And it was a grind, and it's I was going to school full time, working almost 40 hours a week and playing shows and shit when I could. So trying to get your name out there. And then, unfortunately, the last thing that I would say is you got to get lucky, but it's kind of one of those things where, you get lucky by being out there, by sort of creating the opportunity to get lucky, because the way that I got on with Apollo Brown really was just chance, man. It was, I had spoken to him a couple of times before without much interest, we were cool, but I don't think I was on his, if I was on his radar, I was a very, very light blip up in the corner. He wasn't checking for me. But a friend of mine sent him a music video I did, a real random music video that I shot with Brandon Damon of Ox Cinema now, and we had just, after a show out in Grand Rapids, he was living out there. We shot this kind of guerrilla video after a show on the streets, and somebody passed it to Apollo, and that's how he was like, oh shit, he had a copy of my first record, Please Tip Your Driver, sitting on his shelf when I went to meet him the first time, but it was unopened. He had never listened to it or anything, so he kept it for whatever reason, but it was just sitting there. It's still in the cellophane wrap. Got really fucking lucky, but But if I hadn't been out playing shows, if I hadn't have been out meeting him a couple times for me to at least be familiar with me, if we weren't shooting videos and shit, never would have happened. So as much as it's luck, you got to just get yourself out there as much as you can. I mean, it sucks, but footwork is real. I know online is something that a lot of people use, and it's a huge tool, but face-to-face shit is still important.
I've been, talking recently a lot about with music artists or whatever, comic book artists, and creators, a lot about the idea of, collaboration over competition. What does that mean to you?
I think that when you're younger, it's more, especially in the rap scene, hip hop scene in Detroit, Michigan in general. Man, it can feel like such a competition when it just doesn't fucking need to be. Like, we were in Lansing, especially when I was really getting, cutting my teeth, was working with the Black Pack. That was back when, James Garden, for people that aren't familiar with, was Filthy, when Joshua Smith was Jay Young, when, the local artists that, friends of mine and people that still make music to this day, got together, and we, it was something where we all kind of had a similar vision, a similar goal. I mean, it's not in the same breath, but, it was similar to the early days for, Michigan hip hop heads of like Athletic Mike League, of getting together and realizing all of you have certain things that you can offer. One of when we were in Black Pack, one of the best parts of having the crew that we had was we had a graphic designer, Sean Smack. We had Will Ketchum and Marcel Williams, who had industry connections. Like, it was people that were just kind of, and you get lucky again by being able to be fortunate to be in the right place at the right time to meet those people. But yeah, it's I do remember times, and without saying names, of people around the scene that I just felt like either for my own ego or their own ego, we didn't connect, and it kind of ruined not ruined, but I think that had we built a little better, some people in the scene, it could have been much bigger at the time. You just lose out a lot on it, and it's very easy to fall into that crabs in a barrel mentality. I've done it sometimes. Occasionally to this day, I'll be online and I catch myself like, why am I not getting this? And it's ridiculous. Like, people are out there just trying to move and make music and make a career out of something that's very, very difficult to make a career out of. There's no point in having that mentality at all. It's can eat at you. It sucks. It's it's certainly something that I wish that I had learned a little sooner. No matter how much you're told, though, I feel like as a young person, it's a competition, and it doesn't need to be ever in any case. So
when going into this new album, what were some of the topics that you really wanted to talk about?
I think that the topics that I ended up talking about were, first of all, just kind of like the mental, like I said, isolation of kind of seeing the internet, and just like there's a song on there called America Online, which was really like spawned from the 2016 election and shit like that, where I was just as much a part of that problem of being too angry, too ready to fucking unleash on anyone that had a differing opinion from mine. And and to this day, it's still something where I think you have to draw a line in the sand, like 100%. This isn't like I'm not saying it in some like both sidesism kind of shit. Like, there are things that I do think that are just right and wrong, black and white. But for me, I think the one thing that to me is crazy, and I'm just as guilty of it too, is the way that we interact online is just not how we interact in real life in any way.
Right.
Like, nobody talks to anybody the way that they talk to people online. There were times where I got in arguments with people. I said shit I would have never said to a person in their face, because you respect people too much. And there are consequences if you say some wild shit to somebody. So I think that I wanted to kind of talk about that, just the sort of, the situation in the country, and then just how the internet can be such a incredible place, but we behave pretty badly as human beings online a lot of times. And then just trying to the final song on the record is called Flesh and Bone, produced by Nolan the Ninja. And it's just like, life can feel so overwhelming, especially with the internet, and especially, with how much access to information that we have, that's coming at you at light speed, and on top of just like normal shit, on top of just like how am I going to pay this bill, or how am I going to fix this, get get new tires on my car, whatever, that like it can just drive you fucking nuts. I mean, I've had super bad problems with anxiety over the last year, because of it, and just trying to remember that as you're going through things, we all go through this shit, and at the end of the day, you'll look back on it and it will not. What's driving you crazy today probably will not be a problem even 6 months from now, 2 months from now.
Right.
You'll look back on it and you'll get through it. Like, people make it through. There have been months where you're trying to figure out how to pay your rent, and it's like killing you on the inside, and then 2 months later you've got more money. You know what I mean? Like, it's just getting through and realizing that it won't mean as much as you thought it meant today. A lot of things will be more important.
As and this goes for both of us. We're a couple white dudes in hip hop, and
Right.
we have access to a lot. We're around a lot of different of marginalized people, whether it's by
Hmm.
race or gender or sexuality. How
Yeah.
do you as a person, and even through your place in this culture, how are you an ally? What do you feel like being an ally is?
I mean, I think that I can throw out all the cliche ways of how to be an ally is of letting marginalized voices be the center. Don't center yourself as um, a white person, a white man, a white straight male, whatever. The thing to me that I think has helped a lot, and if people would do this more often, is being an ally. One is um, stepping aside when it's not your place to say some shit. You might think you have opinions on something, you see something, but you might not really have a say if you, in certain cases, for instance, the abortion shit. Like, this is a woman's issue. This is not a man's issue. I don't have a fucking say in the shit. Um, when you see, at being a part of the culture as a white person means of hip hop culture, especially, you tend to be around a lot of African American people, and you can see that there are community moments that happen as Black people in America, that they have discussions, and it's wild to kind of sit there and have that access to see these internal discussions in the African American community, and to know that you're not gonna should not ever inject yourself into that as a white person, at least not in any kind of authoritative way
Right.
whatsoever. Um, and I think that for me, it's shutting the fuck up, which I think is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Offering, trying to offer, if you have access to something that someone else might not, because of of whatever privilege that you might have, whether it's heteronormative privilege or whatever, trying to help bring other people around, involved, that may not have that access that you have, just based on those privileges. Um, and then the other thing is, like, just remembering that if someone is talking in a negative way about white men, to not just feel attacked because you're a white man. The shoe might not fit. You know what I mean? It might not be about you specifically, but as a generalization, and a usually true generalization, it's like, people can feel. I think that I've seen that a lot online, where you see that, but not all men, or not whatever, but not all white people. But of course, that's a given. Like, you don't need to feel so personally attacked every single time
Right.
someone critiques a white cop for doing that. You know what I mean? Like, the personal attack thing is just, it's very much easier to exist when you realize it's probably not about you. And if you feel personally attacked, though, it might actually be about you. So maybe you should check your shit and look in the mirror.
When you were, coming into the hip hop scene, what were some of the things that you learned, as a white man, that maybe you didn't know how to act, didn't realize you should act in a different way? Was there anything that you learned during those early years, or even up until now? Because even for me, I'm still learning some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. I've learned, like, it's kind of crazy. It's sort of a cop-out answer, but like I literally have learned so much that it's hard to pinpoint like something specific. I think pretty much everything that I just said is shit that I would not have ever learned had it not been for having a diverse group of people around me. And that I'm trying to think, like, it's not that I didn't know that this happened, but actually, like, like as being for a lot of cases when I was with working with the Black Pack, in many cases I would be the only white person in the group. Not always. I mean, there are other members of the group that were white, but like going down to like South by Southwest, kind of truly seeing racism happen like 100% firsthand, where I wouldn't have noticed that before. Like there was a very couple. That's the only. I mean, those are the times that I've seen it. Like we were driving down to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, from Lansing, Michigan, and getting pulled over. It was me and the other 3 passengers in the car were black. I was the driver. I think I was doing 5 over. Got pulled over. The cop was just asking wild ass questions about where we were going, how we were getting there, like really trying to like over and over repeat these questions so that he'd like catch me slipping or something. So this is, mind you, again, for going 5 over the speed limit. He asked me to get out of the car. He takes me to his car, sits me in the front seat with him, and he's asking me if I'm all right. Is everything okay?
Wow.
And I'm like, this is crazy shit. Like, and this is like Southern Indiana, I believe. And he runs me through like asking me the same, and he's like asking me who is each one of these people in the car and what their role are as a musician, what are they doing again. I was just like, I was blown away at how different those interactions, and not that I didn't believe, black people when they said that they were treated differently, but how much different that police interaction was than anything I had ever encountered before. And I think that's the only way, one of the only ways to really, learn is to experience it, and not to say I didn't experience racism against myself. It was racism that just a crazy version of it, where he's checking it, like I said, make sure if I'm okay, like I've been kidnapped or some crazy shit.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, so those are experiences that you can only have with having, being in a diverse group, friend group.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Like, yeah, you really can't. You believe that it happens, you see it on TV, but
Right.
when you actually experience it around you with your peoples, you're like, holy shit, that is fucked up.
Yeah, because that never would have happened like if I was going, other trips that I've taken with, like road trips I've taken with, my predominantly white group of friends, from, like Howell, like that would never happen. And it's not that I hadn't had run-ins with cops before, but they were just wild. It was just a wildly like different experience than I'd had before.
That's crazy. It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
When I always like to like ask this question when I'm doing these interviews. Is like, what what's sort of a nugget of knowledge that from your life and career that anybody listening to this, it doesn't matter what sort of avenue of artistry that they're in, that they could sort of project into their own life.
One nugget of knowledge. I think for me, I guess the only thing that I think that has made me be able to have success is learning vulnerability and learning to be able to just like, as an artist, as a, being able to like flatly say who you are and not be scared of like certain things that are very painful to deal with, I guess. That can be very difficult. That can be something that not everyone, maybe it's not even good for everybody, but like I'm trying to think of, if there's one thing that I think defines what has made my art at any level successful, it's vulnerability that I use in it, that I'm not scared to just say have these really kind of painful moments be put into my writing, whether it's painting or, whatever you do if you're a comic book artist, like you were, talked about earlier. I think trying to express that and be that, and not be afraid that, in the most cases, the things that you've been through that are very painful not everyone, but someone else has experienced it very similarly, or to the T, and that's a really important thing, and I think it's very powerful when you connect with people like that.
How did you open yourself up to that vulnerability? It can be kind of scary.
Yeah, it was when I was like when I first started writing, I did it. I guess probably the scariest shit in the world was, writing as a kid. And I made these little like recordings on a little 4-track tape recorder when I was in like little Tascam recorder when I was in high school, and kind of showing friends. Like it was sort of hard for me to. I was really scared to like tell people who I was, and like, we had moved. My family didn't have a lot of money. We had moved to Howell from Redford, Michigan, because my grandfather, my dad's dad, had basically kicked us out of the house because my dad wasn't able to pay rent, was having money problems. Kicked us out. We ended up moving to Howell. We live in this apartment, which is a fine apartment, but I felt like, I don't know, like being like the poor kid kind of felt really shitty. So I didn't share a lot of parts of my life with people like that, even in Howell. For a lot of, like, I would tell people I lived in a house behind the apartment complex and, in Howell, and that I didn't live at the apartments because it was kind of like a low income, even if in Howell, it was like a low income, apartment complex. And I think that for me, that was really embarrassing, I guess. And I don't know why to this day it was, but you're a kid, things that you realize don't mean anything as you get older, or maybe were important for, developing your character, or, ended up being good in a sense. I think that was using my writing about these things and then showing friends and, girls I had crushes on and shit, like my stuff that really, and getting a positive response was, even though it was terrible shit. So I must have had really nice friends telling me my shit was good, or really bad friends, however you want to see it. But getting that positive response and kind of validating that vulnerability, I think, is really important. And I think people will find that for the most part, being vulnerable to people, to friends, to family, usually, maybe this is terrible advice, but I think usually is met with positivity, and that can be really, really validating. Obviously there are cases, that I can think of that it probably wouldn't be, it could potentially not be, but generally speaking, I think that vulnerability does get rewarded, at least, with our generation, and, I hope. Because now I'm like running through and I'm thinking of like other moments where, you see in like the Black community where depression and mental illness is kind of looked at as a, bad thing. So maybe that's my own privilege talking as a white dude, that I'm allowed to be emotionally available and vulnerable. So I don't know. That's a good question though.
Right. How do you feel like being a hip hop artist, and maybe just even hip hop in general, has been, positively, has had a positive effect on your life?
I mean, it gave me everything. Like it really, it's totally defined who I am, in ways that I don't even think I ever knew could happen. I mean, to be able to be doing this still at 31 years old, and just the worldview that the art itself is first as a fan. I mean, before being an artist, I mean, it shaped me. It made me think differently. It made me, I think, more of a, much more open-minded person. Hearing, politics and social shit in rap, especially, was huge for me. I mean, it completely altered my, not altered, I guess I wouldn't say, because I didn't really have, strong political opinions when I was young, super young, but it formed the basis of, my worldview. I mean, and how I felt, like being, empathetic towards people, recognizing that like people go through shit, and we all go through it. So that's a huge part of like why I write the way I write, because music helped me so much, listening to stories that, even though that, they weren't like, you couldn't relate with every detail, but, hearing about, the rappers that had, parents with, substance abuse issues, they might've been talking, about crack or whatever, but for me, my mom was an alcoholic, and it was very difficult. So, just having that relatability, from a personal level, a social level, political level, taught me everything, man.
Cool. Oh, excuse me. I always like to, end my interviews with the same question.
Okay.
And if you don't have a answer, that's fine.
Sure.
And the question is, who is somebody that you would recommend that for this podcast that I could realistically interview that would have some good stories or lessons to talk about?
I think I don't know if you're into this kind of music, but one of my like favorite bands of the last probably 4 or 5 years is they don't go by now, but they went by the name Andrew Jackson Jihad. Um, they're a folk punk band based out of Arizona, um, and the lead singer is actually, I don't know if he still lives here, but he was living in Lansing for a while. I think his wife was um, getting her doctorate or something at MSU. And the lead singer, I think I've met him in passing, but really dope, super dope band, like a great songwriter. Really writes from a place of like emotional struggle, but finds a way to make it positive. It's something that I'm actually super jealous of, and the way that he writes, to find those positive vibes and be able to use, make it more of a gift instead of so being focused on the bad parts of it. I think you could probably get in touch with him, and I don't know how much, press they do and stuff, but he's a really dope dude. I bet would have some really, really cool uh, stories to tell. And that's probably the most left wing person I could come up with. So
Awesome. All right, man. It was good talking with you, like always.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Where can people go online to get more information about what you're up to and about the new album?
You can go Twitter at Chris Orrick Raps. When I changed everything from Red Pill, it just ended up being pretty much the same, but with Chris Orrick. So Chris Orrick Raps on Facebook, Chris Orrick Raps on Twitter, Instagram. You can check out Mello Music Group is the label that I'm on. That's Mello without a W at the end. They're all, on the social media platforms at mellomusicgroup.com. I'm on Spotify, iTunes, Bandcamp, anything is under Chris Orrick. So if you see the big guy, the big white guy with the shitty beard, probably holding a cat in a lot of my pictures, so you'll find me.
I love those pictures with the cat.
Thanks.
How's the cat doing?
Good, man. He's good. He's a jerk, but he's a good cat, I guess, as far as cats go.
All right, so that's my interview with Chris Orrick. Go cop that new album, Out to Sea, right now. It's awesome. There will be links in the show notes for this episode at freshasthepodcast.com on where you can stream or purchase Out to Sea and follow everything that Chris Orrick is doing. So, again, thank you for listening. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.